Okay, so today I'm going to be making Persian kebab Kobe day, which is a barbecued beef on a skewer. It's very simple ingredients. Today I'm using 1 pound of beef. Takes about a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. And there's also an optional ingredient of a teaspoon of sumac, which you may be able to find at most grocery stores, but if not, you could also find that online. And then the last ingredient is 1 medium-sized onion. And this will give you about 4 kebab skewers. So we'll begin. So the first step in making a Persian kebab is to grind the onion. That can be achieved using a food processor, or in my case I'm going to be using a hand blender. You just want the onion really fine because you don't want large chunks of onion in the Persian kebab. So that's going to be my first step. Okay, so essentially you're making onion puree, and you actually want to get like a fineness strainer. You want to drain off as much of the liquid as possible. The onion's going to add a nice flavor. It's going to add that nice sweet flavor of the onion to your kebab. And if you get this is the main trick in making a good kebab, because as long as you get as much of the liquid out of the onion as possible, you're not going to have trouble having the kebab, the meat, stick to your skewer. So this can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes depending on your strainer and like the density of the onion. So just to help it along, you just kind of like fold the onion on the strainer. If you need to, you could also probably try and use a cheesecloth. That might work as well. I just found that this works best for me. So I'll be draining this liquid off and I'll be showing you the next step. Okay, so I drained as much liquid as I could out of the onion. That, like I said, is one of the most important steps in making a good kebab. The next most important thing is having a good meat. I always use 100% ground beef. Other people also use like half lamb, half beef. But you want to make sure that the meat itself is at least lean meat. You don't want extra lean because you still want some of that fat, some of that juiciness. If you have too little fat, it'll also start falling off the skewer, and you don't want that. So I'm just going to add the onion to the kebab, or to the meat. And then I'm going to add the salt, which, as I said, is about a teaspoon. A teaspoon of pepper, but you can salt it according to your taste. And an optional ingredient, like I said, is sumac. Also, you could use turmeric. Turmeric will help give it like a nice golden color. I generally don't add any of those two ingredients, like the sumac or the turmeric, just because I usually add turmeric on top of the meat itself afterwards. But if you want like a nice sour, lemony type of flavor inside of your meat, you can definitely add the sumac. This next step is just incorporating those spices and the onion into the meat. I find that it works best by hand. You just want to like mix this meat together. And this is also another very important step in making a good kebab. The better that it's mixed, the better it will stick to the skewer. So you actually want to mix this for close to 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much meat that you're actually using. I generally do it about probably a little bit in between, like 10 to 12 minutes. So I'm going to mix this, and next step will be putting it onto the skewer on the end of the skewer itself. So I can't really emphasize enough how important it is to mix your meat very well. I know my first attempts to make kebab, it wasn't really sticking to the skewer all that much, and this is really like the key point that was making a mastic to the skewer. So like I said, like I mix anywhere between 10 to 12 minutes. You'll see that kind of takes on like almost like a paste-like consistency, which is kind of really what you want. So you can like throw it around if you want, just to like keep like massage the meat, but just make sure you're mixing well. Okay, so I've mixed my meat. You can put the meat in the refrigerator for a few minutes, just like kind of like maybe solid up, but it's okay. But for this step, you want the skewers, of course, and you also want a nice a small bowl of nice cool water. That's going to help you put the meat on the skewer. So what you want to do, you want to take about a small handful, a small palmful. Because it's about a pound of beef, I try to like keep it as about 1/4 pound per skewer. So you want to like take the meat in your hand, and you kind of want to make a small, you want to make kind of like an egg shape out of the meat. And what you're going to do, you're going to take your skewer, you want to put that at the top of the skewer, and press it right in. And press that into the skewer like that. Then this is where the water comes in. You want to put water on your hand this way. It keeps like the meat from sticking to your hand. But you want to shape that meat around the skewer. Make sure it's nice and even all the way around. And just go to the water as much as you think possible, just to keep that from sticking to your hand. And you want to just work that meat down the skewer. You want to kind of pinch it off like a little bit at the top. That kind of keeps it on the skewer also. You don't want to put like too much water on it, because it's just going to like keep your meat very wet. You would just want to make sure that meat is nice and even. Now if you want, you could also save some of the onion water. I've seen that on like certain like other websites showing to keep the onion water to like put around the meat as well at this step. It probably adds a little bit more flavor. That way you're not wasting that onion. So once you have that nice and even around the skewer, there's like a very distinct shape to the Persian kebab, which is it has ridges. Like I'm not a very 100% professional at this, but these ridges are also very important because it helps set meat on the inside. Helps the heat get between the skewer and like the meat, helping it cook inside. So I'll be doing that for the next 3 skewers, and then we'll be grilling them. So I've completed my kebabs. Another I failed to mention is like another important thing is to make sure there's no like none of the skewers showing in between like the meat. You want to make sure it's nice and evenly distributed around the skewer, because if the metal is exposed, it's going to heat up faster than the meat, and it's going to make that meat fall off the bone. Off the metal, off the skewer. So from here, I'm actually just going to put it in the fridge for a while because I need to get the charcoal grill started, and that's just going to help keep the meat like to stay on the skewer. So we're putting the meat on the grill, and then this is the next most important step for making good kebab. Is when you put it on the grill, you actually want to turn them just about every 3 seconds or so. This is going to keep it from like heating up more on one side than the other, because if it does that, like the uncooked side is going to start falling off the skewer. So Just want to turn them regularly. Like I said, like about 3-second intervals. You know, I make sure like your charcoal is nice and hot. If it's like a bad heat or not hot enough, it just kind of like swelters the meat and just kind of like melts and falls off your skewer. Once the meat starts firming up and cooking, you don't have to turn them as often. But you just gotta do this as a preventative measure to keep it from falling off. As you can see, the meat's starting to cook. It's starting to pull a little bit away from the skewer. The meat's pretty solid. There's not a lot of pink left. You don't really have to turn them now as regularly. Now you just kind of like want to brown them as much as you want on the outside. Again, like they're ready when like some of the juices stop flowing from the meat, and like has a nice barbecue color on the outside. And then soon we'll actually be adding like a tomato to a skewer. That's like a traditional way to serve Persian kebab with a grilled tomato. So here we're just finishing off the kebab by putting some sumac over the top. It's a traditional way that it's served, again with the side of tomato and of course Persian rice with saffron.